All right, so I want to make a video updating everyone, getting right into it. Canada, 101,050 cases, 8,410 dead. Alberta, 31 new cases yesterday, so down a little bit. 534 active cases. I believe that is up a little bit, but the good news is the hospitalization numbers are back down. Um, Honestly, again, it's same old, same old. There's not a whole lot to worry about. I think it's very obvious at this point that the increase in cases is almost exclusively due to um, the government just discovering a bunch of new asymptomatic cases. I think that's rather obvious at this point. Um, you again, and you look at other provinces too, because I don't want to say just because Alberta. The reason for me saying that is that we look at other areas, and none of the other areas, or at least the other areas, seem to back this up. And we have Saskatchewan and Manitoba both, I think, completely reopening, so they've had no issues, at least nothing major. We have Ontario, who continues, their case totals have trended down. Quebec's, I believe, have trended down as well, and that's what we're looking for. That I think Alberta is just the fact that per capita, I think we're just testing the most people. In fact, I know for most of this time we have. Alberta, I believe, at least as of a while ago, and I assume those numbers have stayed the same because we've only increased our capacity, is that we're testing the most people per capita. Again, we've tested almost 10% of our population. I don't think there's another province that's done that. We're continuing to pump out, 7, 8,000 tests a day. If we can keep doing that, then we really don't have much to worry about. We really don't have much to worry about. Pretty well everything should be reopened, aside from some minor restrictions. I mean, people, old folks' homes definitely need restrictions. People that are over the age of 60, 65 should strongly suggested to be home, and anyone who tests positive should be staying home. Aside from that, we shouldn't really have any restrictions. Masks should be recommended. Should they be forced? Absolutely not. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to point out. Um, some bigger stuff came out of the States. Now, normally I talk about their numbers. Their numbers were up, I believe, a little over 30,000 yesterday. But the thing to point out is that the daily new deaths in the States have continued to trek down. In fact, we had, again, yesterday was the lowest day since March 24th. And if you look at the numbers in the States, they've been consistently trending down for like almost 2 months now. And they're still trending down. So it's the same thing in the States, I believe. In fact, it is by definition, because if we're having less and less people die, but you're having more cases, then pretty much by default you're discovering more asymptomatic people. Because if you're discovering more symptomatic people, then more people are going to be dying. Because asymptomatic people are largely younger people. Symptomatic people tend to be older. Obviously, there's exceptions, but that's just the general trend. So the fact that they continue to have less and less new deaths just proves that the increase in cases is pretty much exclusively due to asymptomatic cases. It's pretty much exclusively due to asymptomatic cases. We don't have a lot to worry about. Again, I constantly see people on social media that are all paranoid about this kind of stuff, and it's really it's really just pointless. In the fact, again, they people just don't want to admit they're wrong. They'll look for any reason to not have to admit they're wrong, and that's kind of what I've been saying. So the other thing too to point out too is that there will be a push to re-lock down. I guarantee it. Number one, because the Democrats in the states desperately want mail-in ballots so they can cheat. And number two, again, they want to destroy the economy. Like, they want to destroy the economy. Um, I mean, it would benefit Trudeau in Canada because they want to bring in all their socialist programs, and Trump gets most of his support, especially people that have flipped to Trump, are people that have recognized, hey, the economy was really good under Trump. I mean, it's, at least compared to Canada or your average country, I'm going to vote for him. But if the economy's not good, well, then that makes people less likely to want to vote for Trump. And obviously, there's other reasons for it. There's still people, I mean, the Bill Gateses of the world want to force their vaccines on everyone. The pharma companies, again, along with Bill Gates, want to make a ton of money. It's funny that the leftists never point that kind of stuff out. If your local employer who has 10 employees, pays you $1 less an hour and you think you're worth, and he's terrible because he's greedy. He's making an extra dollar an hour off me. But if Bill Gates wants to make $100 billion off forcing vaccines on everyone, that's perfectly fine. Again, it just goes to show that when the leftists complain about their corporate greed and all that garbage, they don't actually care. They only care about it when it benefits the right, and when it benefits the left, all of a sudden they don't care about it. So again, just wanted to point that out. Um, so this is from Ben Shapiro. He's quoting George Orwell, and I'll read it and then we'll talk a little bit about it. He says, "Every book has been rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street and building has been renamed, every date has been altered, history has been stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right." And that's obviously quoting George Orwell out of his famous book 1984. Now, he wrote that book in 1948, and most of the stuff he said there is happening to come true. I mean, the statue thing, the book burning, the buildings and streets being renamed, and this is the problem that when you destroy history or you forget history, you're bound to repeat it. And this is the problem that I'm really starting to become impatient with people who are not overly political or people that hate getting into that kind of stuff. Again, which isn't people watching this pretty much by definition, but the problem is that we're no longer messing around. Like the apolitical people have always had the, oh, it doesn't really affect you that much argument, but I think we're kind of past that in the fact that we have literal, borderline, not far off civil war going on in the states. We have politicians in Canada constantly stoking racial divisions. So things aren't going in the right direction by any shape of any way, and for the simple reason that there's no pushback. Whenever the right does something anywhere remotely out of uncalled for or out there, it's viciously attacked, it's viciously ridiculed, and it's stamped out. When the left goes too far, and then this is something that Jordan Peterson talks about, that I'm not the hugest Jordan Peterson fan, but this is one of the things I think he's most right about, and something he should talk more about, is that there's nothing real that no one ever really pushes back on the left going too far, both throughout history and today. For the again, it's a simple reason too. Like communism was responsible for the deaths of over 100 million people in the 20th century. Fascism maybe what 15, 20 million, and not only that, we fought a world war to, or largely fought a world war to end it. Um, Even though again we're talking 5, 6, 7 times as many people died at the hands of leftist ideologies. And fascism isn't far right. Fascism is National Socialism. Um, it's nationalism. It's a little bit of nationalism mixed in with socialism. It's not actually far right. The reason why people think that it's far right is because it's racist, and for whatever reason, they associate racism with being on the right, even though it's never been true. You look at the Democrats were always the party that supported slavery. There was the Republicans that ended slavery. It was the Democrats that fought against the Civil Rights Bill. It was the Republicans that supported it. And it's the Democrats nowadays that are proposing literal racist laws, and it's the Republicans that oppose it. So again, at no point in history, even up to this day, has it been the right that has been pro-racism. It has always been the left, like literally for the last 200 years of at least of the state's history, and even in Canada. Um, I'm not sure about Canada actually, but Canada wasn't nearly as racist of a country. Canada didn't have slavery. Did we do stuff to the natives that we shouldn't have done? Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that is largely, a lie. I mean, smallpox blankets, a complete and utter lie. We stole their land. Again, nobody at the time was against quote unquote stealing land. It was the right of conquest was recognized by literally everyone back then. Um, the school stuff, yeah, that was pretty bad, but as a whole, Canada's history is not nearly as racist as the states. I mean, we had the Underground Railroad, for God's sakes. Um, and again, the fact that they have to bring up stuff that's literally a flat out lie to prove the racism, like smallpox blankets and the colonialization garbage, just proves that the racism wasn't that bad. Like, if it was, you wouldn't have to make stuff up. But getting back to this stuff, this is the problem, that So many people nowadays are just so asleep. They're just asleep at the wheel and they don't care about this kind of stuff. And it's for the simple reason that they don't want the mob to come for them, at least most of them. I think they recognize in the back of their head that things are pretty messed up, but they don't want the mob to come for them because if the mob comes for them, they could lose their jobs, they could lose their livelihoods. The problem is that if the mob keeps getting their way, you're going to lose your job anyway. So you might as well stand up for what's right now rather than risk losing it all in the future. Because if you lose it now, at least you can plan, a way to get out of it. If you lose it in the future, everything's done. You're going to end up in a gulag, or you're going to end up with those people. So that's the problem. It's stand up to the mob now, or end up in a gulag, because this is where this kind of stuff ends. That's definitely where this kind of stuff ends. Now, speaking of that, this is from Stefan Molyneux commenting on someone who's clearly a rabid leftist. They have the classic Karen haircut. They look like a Karen. So he says the brutal dehumanization of entire groups of human beings is always the prequel for mass political terror. I mean, when you look back at history, I think that's pretty clear. I mean, look at what the Nazis did with the Jews. I mean, the perfect example. Um, but there's a lot of other examples as well. I mean, you look at the Armenians from the Turks, all these groups of people that were viciously slaughtered. But reading a little bit of these comments again, it's classic, just stupid. Again, this has 1,500 retweets too, so it's absolutely insane that so many people actually believe this. But let's read a little bit of this garbage here. This is from the Palmer Report. I don't know who this guy is, but anyway, people who promote the racist propaganda and hate speech on OANN are dangerous thugs. They have no place in respectable society. Mike Gundy cannot remain at Oklahoma State head coach, too influential of a position in society. Fire him unless he agrees to get extensive psychological help. In other words, let's throw him in a gulag and try and re-educate him. The classic communist line. Again, this is the problem too, is that these people nowadays pretend that communism doesn't exist nowadays. Of course it does. This is literally a communist line right here. Fire him unless he agrees to extensive psychological help. What they're really saying by that is we're going to throw him in a gulag and we're going to try to re-educate him. That's what they're saying. It's time we acknowledge that conservatism isn't just some political view. It means you're the very bottom rung of society, dangerous and deranged. Some conservatives are trying to become better people, great, but people who flaunt their conservatism are psychotic. Again, if you, I don't care what it is, but if you believe that 40% of the population are psychotic, it's you who has the issue, because I don't even believe that about the left. I believe that most of these people on the left are, in fact, probably 90 to 95% of them are just useful idiots. The argument has always been that because of public schools and universities and propaganda on TV, that people just become so dumbed down that they lose the ability to think for themselves and just end up being brainwashed. Um, Conservatism means you don't believe in equality. Again, that's just stupid as to whole. Again, if you're on the left, you don't believe in equality. Equality, at least most people on the left, not everyone. Um, Equality means you start at the same position. What the left believes is you end in the same position. That is not equality. If under the left's point of view, if you don't think everybody should get to finish at the same time, that means that you don't believe in equality. That's what the left believes, at least people like this. What equality really is you start at the same, you're having a 100-meter dash. Everybody starts at the same spot. Everybody, if you jump early, you're disqualified. You got to wait for the gun to go off, then you get to go. That's what equality is. And the problem is that when you have that, different people are going to be able to run different, levels of speed. If you put me up against a race, with Usain Bolt, I'm going to get destroyed. He'll beat me by like 5 seconds. Um, and that's the problem too, is that the left views that as, oh, exploitation. Oh, um, Usain Bolt is cheating. There's bias that favors him. All this garbage. But in reality, Usain Bolt is just that much better than me. There's no exploitation. There's no nothing. He's just that much better than me. And that's the problem with the left, is that they don't believe that. The last part, it means you want it all for yourself and you're willing to destroy other groups of people to take it all for yourself. That is not a crime against the law, but it's a crime against humanity, and we must all acknowledge that as much. Again, that's just rabid, collectivism. All your wealth should be stolen for us. All that garbage. Again, You don't believe in equality, buddy. You don't believe in equality. Not conservatives don't believe you want to have it all for yourself. You just means that you shouldn't be forced to subsidize other people's terrible decisions. I don't believe. How is it possibly? Can you possibly suggest that it's selfish to say I shouldn't have to pay the same amount of money for healthcare as the guy who smokes a pack a day, as an alcoholic, who has diabetes, and who's going to die when he's 50? He's going to cost the system millions of dollars. Uh, I'm going to cost the system maybe 100,000, if that, and yet we have to pay the same amount for healthcare. How in the world do you consider that to be fair? Again, these people are absolutely insane. Again, that's just an example too. I could go on and on. Conservatives cannot be teachers, police officers, doctors, lawyers, coaches, or bosses. It's constitutionally unfair to. Like, how is it constitutionally unfair? Like, my God. Um, who are subjected to the conservatives' deranged judgment. Conservatives can do menial work until they are ready to join the human race. Again, this guy doesn't even believe that conservatives are human. Again, this is not going to end well. It's not going to end well. We shouldn't be cold hearted about this, but having a conservative police officer, for instance, isn't much different than having a KKK member as a police officer. Again, they hate these collective judgments. The left hates collective judgments so much, but yet they're collectivizing them as being all KKK members. Again, we should again, this is just another communist line here. We should rehabilitate any conservatives who are willing to try. We should pay them to undergo therapy and retraining so they can understand the world around them. But first, we must get them out of the positions of influence because they're infringing on the rights of others. No, you're not infringing on the rights of others. Again, this is the problem with the left, is that they believe that everything that they believe should be viciously forced down your throat. Their economic system, their political beliefs, everything. They view that as not being, or as not infringing on people's rights. No free speech, not infringing on people's rights. But they view having free speech, not wanting to burn books, not wanting to force other people to pay for your health care as not infringing on people's rights. Again, these people are so insane, it's not even funny. It's like if I was trying to make a parody of these people, this is exactly what I would do. Like it's exactly what I would do. It's like just how insane people are. So anyway, I went on a little bit about that, but this is from Charlie Kirk. The left would rather cancel a bottle of syrup than a Democratic governor who actually wore blackface. Or, I mean, if you're Canadian, you know who we have that wore blackface. Think about that for a second. Again, this is the problem, that it's only bad, when it's not them. Like the Lenin statue, again, they don't want to get rid of the Lenin statue when he was responsible for the deaths of millions of people. And their argument literally is, oh, he wasn't a racist, so we're not going to get rid of him. He was responsible for the deaths of millions of people. Like, how deranged can you possibly be? Um, and again, too, in their mind, that someone who's black who's on a bottle of syrup is worse than governors who actually wore blackface. Again, stuff stuff that's objectively racist that's going on, very not today, but very recently, within the last generation. That's no problem. But Aunt Jemima's been dead for 100 years, and oh, that's the biggest issue in the world. Like, it's so insane. Like, it's so insane. And Aunt Jemima's own family, relatives don't even want to do it. Like, again, these people are so deranged and such ideologues that they want to do stuff that people's own families don't even want to do. Like, it's insane. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is from Corey Morgan here. He says CERB isn't going anywhere until Trudeau buys himself another term. It will take generations to pay off the debt accrued by this government. Again, we will never pay off the debts. That's something that I think it's very safe to say. Eventually, the government, again, the money's going to become so meaningless. Again, it'll maybe not full on Zimbabwe level of meaningless, but it'll be not far off. And we'll have to completely default on everything. A lot of people will die and suffer because of it. And all this stuff the left claims that they were trying to prevent by doing all this garbage will happen, which is why they're so stupid. Um, and this is the problem too with the CERB thing. That's what I wanted to bring up too, is that whether or not they call it CERB or not, because the economy is going to be so poor coming out of this. I mean, it already wasn't very good in Canada. The government's going to have to do something. They're going to have to do something, and my guess is that they'll keep something around. It may not be CERB. I'm not sure. My guess is that they probably, I mean, they extended it till the end of the summer. That's going to be tough because there will be a second wave at some point. I highly doubt it'll be anything we have to worry about. I highly doubt it'll anything we actually have to shut down for. The government probably will propose shutting down. Will it happen or not? I don't know. But my guess is that a lot of people will become unemployed again, or at least a lot of people will just flat out stay unemployed. And there's going to be something that's going to have to come in to help people pay their bills. And it may be just keeping it around. It may be full on UBI. But my guess is that there will be some form of UBI, at least in some form, that will stay around until, and maybe for the rest of, who knows how long. But the way that the left gets elected is by promising people free stuff. The problem is that every time they get elected, they have to promise people some sort of new free stuff because the amount of free stuff you had before isn't enough. You got to do something different. And free healthcare, free, welfare, free this, free that isn't enough in Canada. So they got to do this too. And who knows what they'll do after that. But this is the thing too, that the Trudeau government could call a snap election anytime now. It all depends on who wins the leadership race, which is something I'll talk about. But who knows what'll happen with that? But the prediction will be, I'm very confident that some form of UBI will stick around. It may not be full on UBI, it may just be increased employment insurance, something like that. But something's going to stay around. Something's going to stay around. So, anyway, I'm going to leave a video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last couple things, check me out on Twitter and check me out on BitChute. All the links are in the description, so you can find them all there.